welcome back to Dun's Little Hobbies, and in today's video, I am going to be talking about my top 5, my main 5 characters of Star Wars The Rise. If you guys don't know, I am making a fan-made story. It's called Star Wars The Rise. And you guys can go ahead and check that out. Link here, link at the end of the video. The fact is, it is a fan-made story made by me, and I am having a blast with it. With that said, now that I'm making a couple more videos a month, I have extra time to make bonus videos for Star Wars The Rise. You know, videos where I can explain certain scenes and how I thought of certain characters and stuff like that. In today's video, we are going to go over my top 5 main characters of Star Wars The Rise. Without further ado, let's go ahead and begin. First up, let's just do the main character of Star Wars The Rise. My main character is named Kevin. His name is Kevin, but of course he is actually a Sith. His Sith name is Slade. How did I come up with the character of Kevin? So actually, before I started writing Star Wars The Rise, I had another story idea that was called The Sith Truth, is what I was going to call it. And what it was going to be was it was going to be about how a character named Slade was actually a Sith in training long before, the Rise of the Republic or anything like that. This character named Slade was going to basically learn how the Sith started. He was going to learn about the Sith. He was a Sith in training. We would see him become not only an apprentice but a master. And then he would learn that he didn't want to be a Sith. He would try to betray the Sith, and he would eventually have died at the end. That was the original idea for the character of Slade. And then when I started actually wanting to write my story, Star Wars The Rise, I took a couple of ideas, including this story about Slade, and just combined it all together. Now, the character of Kevin, well, Kevin is a combination of both the character of Slade and another character I was going to call Sant. I had another story idea where it was just going to be, it was called Star Wars The Rising Galaxy, and it was going to be this whole story about this world where people with power, people with force powers were kings and queens, and then the normal people were their slaves, and then one prince named Sant was going to rise up against that, and he was actually a king, but he decided not to be a king. He wanted to become a president or a chancellor, and that would have started the first republic of the galaxy. And his character was named Sant, and the planet that he was going to become chancellor of and starts was going to be called Coruscant after him. That was my main idea, and the whole story of Sant was that he was going to eventually start the Jedi Order and stuff like that, and because of that, I kind of combined certain aspects of that character with the character of Slade and created this character Kevin. Now, how did I come up with the name Kevin? Well, I really kind of wanted a funny name to go with the character. Just something random that popped up in my head, and I said Kevin. Why? Not that Kevin's a funny name or anything, but it's just such a normal name that I thought it would be kind of funny to have a Star Wars character named Kevin. But then after really thinking about it, Kevin wasn't Star Wars enough for me, so I said Kevin. That's how I came up with the character's name, Kevin. Yes, Kevin is Star Wars version of Kevin. You're welcome. I am really terrible with names. I can't come up with names very well. In fact, the character named Slade, the Sith name of Kevin. The way I came up with the character of Slade is actually from Teen Titans. Not Teen Titans Go! Get that stuff out here. The original Teen Titans show that was on Cartoon Network I used to love as a kid, and one of the biggest villains I actually really liked, his name was Slade, and I kind of took my character that I was writing for my book. I wanted to base him off of the character of Slade from Teen Titans, the original series. And that's why his name is actually Slade. That's how I got the name Slade. I kind of stole it from there. Well, that is the character of Slade. That is the first character, Kevin. And what about the next guy? The next one we have to talk about is MD3. MD3 is just a droid. So, after writing the story, I just needed a companion for Kevin. I needed someone to fly the ship when him and the other people are talking. MD3 is just a random droid that I came up with one day. You know what? Actually, a long time ago, I was coming up with Star Wars droid ideas. And one idea that I had was, I had this silly idea of what would you do if you took a C-3PO with a different head, and gave him arms like a battle droid. I don't know, it looked really funny to me, and the reason why I thought of that is because we had that one where C-3PO's head was on a battle droid, so I just thought that looked really funny, and I wanted to do something similar, and that's how I came up with the design for MD3. Here's a picture of the design of MD3 that I came up with a long time ago, and whenever I needed a droid in the story, that's how I came up with it. Now, how did I come up with the number MD3? It was the first three things that came up in my head. C-3PO, MD, I don't know how I got MD3, just the first thing that popped up in my head. MD3 was born. There's not much to talk about when it comes to the character of MD3. By the way, I should have probably mentioned that when it came to the character of Kevin, I wanted him to be like a scruffy looking nerf herder with black long hair, and eventually when I started looking for pictures for my book, the first guy that came up in my head was actually Aizawa from My Hero Academia. So Aizawa is what he would have looked like, and when he cuts his hair, he would actually look like the guy from Black Clover. So Uno from Black Clover is what he looks like when he has his hair cut. Or actually, I used kid version of Uno for the little kid version of Kevin too. So there you go. Now, with all of that said, let's go ahead and talk about the next character. The next character is pretty darn interesting to me. The next character is Jarv. So, how did I come up with the character of Jarv? Well, first off, I am a big fan of Ahsoka Tano. And I am a really big fan of the Gruas in general. I think the way they look with their big, they're not horns, but they're tentacle things. Montrals is actually what they call them in Star Wars. And they just seem really interesting to me. They look really different for an alien species, and I just like them. So, obviously, we haven't had any male Togruta, at least not very many male Togrutas in Star Wars, so I really wanted a male Togruta. Now, in my original idea of Star Wars, The Rising Galaxy, where it was going to be that King Sant, or Prince Sant, he had a partner. He had a butler who was actually going to be his best friend, and he was going to be a Togruta named Jarv. Why Jarv? Jarvis from Iron Man. Iron Man's one of my favorite characters, and I really like the character of Jarvis, so that's where I came up with the name Jarv. Again, not very hard to come up with names. Actually, it is, and that's why I tend to just use simple names that I get from somewhere else. With that said, Jarv was always going to be Togruta. He was once going to be Son's butler, but as the story changed, Jarv didn't need to be a butler anymore. So I just kind of changed him into the character he is, and the way he kind of formed as the story went on. None of that was basically planned. I just wanted him to be the best friend of Kevin. That's about it. I really think the way the character has grown in the story, though, is just something fun. And if of course that interests you, go ahead and check out my story. With that said, he's any male Togruta that I find on the internet. That's what picture I use for Jarv. Now, the next character I should talk about is the character Lit. I need a mechanic on the team. I kind of wanted a bounty hunter Mandalorian-esque figure, but then I thought, we see so many of those nowadays. What about a Mandalorian that didn't care about being Mandalorian? And that's how I came up with the character of Lit. I also kind of like the character of Dr. Aphra from Star Wars, the Darth Vader comic books, and now she even has her own comic book. She's actually a really interesting character. I used to love her. Then the comic books kind of got boring to me, so I stopped reading it. I should probably go back and read the rest of Dr. Aphra just to finish it off, even though I already know the ending of it. The fact is, Lit is basically my Dr. Aphra for Star Wars The Rise. She's the mechanic. With that said, she doesn't really have a huge role in the story. The reason why she's a girl, really, is because I just don't have too many female characters in my story, and I felt like I needed some. With that said, I really wanted there to be a girlfriend for Kevin. I wanted to give Kevin that kind of romantic story, because if you don't throw romance in a good story, it's not a good story without a little bit of romance. Look, I'm not talking about turning the whole book into a romance novel, okay? I'm not into that either. But you do need a little bit of Han and Leia romance in Star Wars. You just need that. So I really wanted there to be a romantic interest for Kevin, and so I made the character up of Laura. How did I come up with the name Laura? I don't even know. I really don't. It was the first thing that popped in my head, and that's the first thing I went with, because I can't come up with names. I can't come up with girl names, especially, for the life of me. And that's about it. Now, what does the character of Laura look like? This is kind of how I picture her. This is actually a character from Black Clover, and I think when I eventually do get back to Laura in the story, because she does have an important role to play in the story, this is what she is going to look like. This character is Charming from Black Clover, and that's what I kind of picture her looking like. The tall version, obviously, because Charming in Black Clover is actually this. These two are the same characters. Black Clover, she's usually a real short little girl, but she does have this form when she gets super cool, and I kind of like the look for her, so I'm going to use her for the look of my character of Laura. With that said, that is about it. That is about it for my characters of Star Wars The Rise. Now, I didn't go into too much of the characters' backstories, and that is because the characters' backstories will of course be told in my book, Star Wars The Rise. This video was really just to show you what they kind of look like, what I kind of visioned in my head when I came up with the characters and what the characters look like. With that said, I am out. Thank you guys for watching.